Our next discussion will be about edible innovations. First, we'll hear from John Reif, present on public markets, public places, and public produce. John is the owner of East End Market. It's a neighborhood market and food hub in the Audubon Park Garden District of Orlando. This is a 2-story structure home to a dozen food merchants, a large event space, a market garden, a demonstration kitchen, an incubator kitchen. It has retail space, office space, and an award-winning restaurant. He's also founded the Winter Park Winter Garden Harvest Festivals, operates the Winter Park Urban Farm and Apiary, and is the co-founder of pedal-powered backyard farming initiative called Fleet Farming. That's a bit of a tongue twister. Next, we'll hear from John Thaxton and Ed Childs about the Gulf Coast Innovation Challenge Seafood Sustainability Initiative. As the Senior Vice President of the Community Investment Gulf Coast Community Foundation, John Thaxton creates and implements key strategies for transforming our region's nonprofit community and providing leadership on emerging issues. John joined Gulf Coast in 2012 after completing his 12 years of service on the Sarasota County Commission. In his current role, John works with nonprofit organizations, donors, and other community partners to invest in Gulf Coast grants, resources, and projects that will transform and improve public policies. John is recognized throughout Florida as a leading advocate for protecting our natural environment. We'll also hear from Ed Childs, who owns 3 waterfront restaurants on Anna Maria and Longboat Key, with the flagship being the Sandbar. Mar Vista opened in 1990, and then again the Beach House on 1993. Ed's restaurants have long featured the finest in Florida fare, but has recently become a pioneer in sustainable tourism industry. Seeing the value of sustainable tourism in business and community, Ed partners to continue to pave the way, and they are determined to have a more beautiful and prosperous Florida culture for generations to come. Finally, we'll hear from Brian Beeman, who is representing All Face Food Bank today. All 3 of these gentlemen will be speaking with us, and please remember to take your questions so that we can make sure we have some time for you. Gentlemen, will you please join us on the stage?
Okay, great. Well, hello. Good to be here. I was lost, and now I'm found. I was up the street, and I'm like, I'm at the address. She's like, no, you're not. I'm like, I'm not. So here I am. I'm John Reif. I'm a born and raised Floridian. Come from a family from the Keys and settled in Central Florida. And my mom was Miss Orlando. So I say all that to frame this, and I come from sort of a Wild West feel and this yuppie Orlando feel, and it give you a little grounding on where we come from. As I mentioned, I'm the owner of East End Market. Actually, so how long do I have to go on here? 12 minutes. Okay, well, if I get long-winded, just throw the shoe. Gotcha. Oh, perfect, great, okay. So here's just a quick couple pictures. This is our market. It's in a redeveloped church. So it was a church that had been vacant for a long time. It had a lot of problems, asbestos, no sewer. It had no stormwater retention. But those were problems I knew how to fix, and so we were able to make it happen here. I'll explain a little bit about that. We've become a bit of a third place. We used to be closed on Mondays, and we would still have people sitting in the courtyard just to work and be in the environment. So we knew we were kind of onto something when we weren't even open, and people still wanted to call this a place to gather and have conversation. And then a lot of things have been spurred out of this. So part of the conversation that I want to go through today is how this has become a nexus for new projects being birthed in Orlando that we sort of gave them a sandbox to play in. So raw material. There's a fellow developer in town named Craig Usler. He's doing some development in downtown Orlando, and his kind of mantra is, what's here? What's already here? What's the raw material that's already here that maybe we just haven't built with yet? If we have a box of Legos, let's not try to build a Lincoln log cabin. Let's use the Legos to build with. So what's already in the community? That's a big part of what we are, is looking what was already there. A lot of it for us is, we live in the Main Street district of Orlando. We are super dense. There are a lot of homes, both up-and-coming homes, some million-dollar homes, some ranch-style homes, some yurts. We are a pretty big melting pot. Even in more monolithic environments, the local needs are diverse. So trying to understand what those needs are and can you fill them in order to create this sort of sandbox, and or if they have needs, wants, aspirations, can you create an environment where those things can be nurtured and flourish? Okay, so market validation. A lot of what I have done prior to this didn't need any validating. I'm part of a development group that did the Millennium Mall and that whole 400-acre development. We didn't want to ask those questions. We wanted to say, we know people like Starbucks, let's put Starbucks in. Like doing the mom and pop, sustainably minded coffee roaster is a risk. So moving away from that model to finding ways to actually find mom and pop operators that were serving the needs of a local community more directly. It's a bit more risk for a developer, it's a bit more risk for an urban planner, but you're gonna get a product that is more endearing to the community and actually serves the needs of the folks that are there. So a lot of it is finding out what the market actually wants. So before I bought this building, I bought the building in March of 2012. In 2005, I started getting into local food. 2007, I took a cross-country trip with my wife. I saw a bunch of great public markets. I went, why don't we have this in Orlando? So really from 2007, I started I was the token yuppie at the drum circle. And then by 2010, I started doing festivals and pop-up events and putting my money where my mouth was, so to speak. So there were people with really great vision, and I was thinking, well, I align with you, and I'm learning to I'm starting to read from your same playbook, but I'm not quite there yet. Can I empower your vision? So I would take the risk of renting the downtown park and porta potties and fire marshals and all the headache of bureaucracy to make an event happen. But to your point about ephemeral events, we started doing that. And the first one, we're like, is anyone going to even show up? Yes, we're reading about this in Portland and Austin and Seattle, but is anyone in Orlando hip enough to come to a festival about local food in the park? And they showed up. And they showed up in a diverse way. And I remember being at the country club a couple weeks later, and this guy came up and going, oh, I had the best time. I talked to this guy, Joe. And as he's describing Joe, I realized that Joe is the guy that runs the tea house down the street that has full arm tattoos, a bull ring in his nose. I'm like, if you, my attorney friend, are getting along with Joe, then we are on to something. So this idea of market validation has become very core to what we do, letting the temporary events become permanent before spending millions of dollars on you want to have a commissary kitchen to encourage food entrepreneurship. Does anyone else want to use your kitchen? Like, do it in a temporary way. Let's find some ways to not take a mammoth risk, but take a risk a little bit down here. So these are just pictures of some of our events. We had a harvest festival in a couple different cities. We bring together 40 to 50 local farmers, which people had never met before, showing them off. We did, the bottom picture here is, we have 400 of these mobile garden beds in area schools, so kids are learning to see things go from seed to plate, just starting to infiltrate the community with our virus of good ideas. But one of the things we found out is that authenticity is paramount to this. Although I am up here dressed in my yuppie garb, I also am an urban farmer, I'm a beekeeper, I brew my own kombucha. Like I'm a bit of a token, closeted hippie, having lived some time in Asheville. So this is my side yard in a very Martha Stewart neighborhood. And so my mom says, as long as it looks Martha Stewart, I'm okay with it. But what if the mayor drives by? But thankfully the mayor and the city commissioners know what I'm doing. It's not, so to your point of doing it with a smile, nothing's legal here, but we just do it and then we make enough people get behind it that when they want to shut it down, oh, now it's a big news story and get out of the way. So, so it's not bullshit, is what I'm saying. This is for real. This is who I am. So it made it possible that me being a bit more not wearing corduroy, that I still was an authentic member of the community. And so it allowed this sort of middle place between big business and small business and this nexus of trying to create a place where everybody felt welcomed. If that's not you, if you aren't me, which you're not, thank God, it's really a crazy world in here. Who is your maven? Who are the people that could be the me for your project? Who are the people that are going to push the ball down the court? And how can you support them? Through variances to code, to garden and front yards, to creating facade redevelopment grants for entrepreneurs to redevelop and create interesting places to promote these kind of projects. A perfect example are these guys, Lineage Coffee Roasting. Four sons of a missionary father, dragged around the world, were too young to drink booze, so they got into the only other stimulant they could get into, and that was coffee. Came home, wanted to do this. They were panicked about raising $5,000. I have 5 minutes, I'm gonna talk a little bit faster. So I'm just kidding. So we brought them in. They were terrified to do $5,000 of build out in their space. And I said, just do it, trust me, you're gonna be successful. And everyone else in that market signed a year to a 3-year lease. They signed a 2-week lease. But I had faith in them, and at the end of the first weekend, they came up, signed a full year lease, paid rent for the month, and we were off and running. But it took someone else believing in them and seeing that they could be successful to help that thing get launched. Similarly, there are projects that were my vision that I've just let go into the world and help support, and now they are somebody else's project and I'm not involved, but it is so fulfilling to see that thing have life, but not feeling the need to have to hold on to it and say, oh, that's mine, and that's so common in these things, is that someone has this bright idea and then they hold on to it too long to the detriment of its opportunity. So I was already doing urban farming. I had a friend in Kelowna, BC that was doing it by bicycle. I said, could we do this in Orlando? I had the capital, I got the bike trailer built, took the idea to a really innovative group called Ideas for Us. They have a monthly meeting in our space. Again, creating a sandbox where these guys can't afford to be in another venue. They come to our venue once a month on Wednesdays. Innovative ideas for sustainability. I said, hey, here's this idea. I'll teach you how to farm. I'll give you the equipment. You can use our commissary kitchen downstairs to get this thing going. And it's exploded all over. I mean, they've been on every national news, NPR. They were just on nightly news. They're farming 15 different backyards locally, selling it to restaurants, converting lawns into gardens, and all by pedal power. So really innovative program that we just were the nexus for that idea to be launched and to continue to support it in some very minimal way monetarily. I mean, they're using my kitchen. We're not charging them for that. They're using the bike trailer. But it's them, it's their steam, it's their awesomeness, and we are just helping them own their awesomeness. Last but not least, last slide, I've started to get into urban beekeeping, so literally giving them wings. This is my daughter, she's learning now. But looking into other solutions and other things that are thought-provoking that get people asking questions about what else could we be doing. Wait, what do you mean it's legal to have bees in your backyard? Really? Oh yeah, really, like the state wants you to. So we're excited about that, excited to see where people take these projects and really, 2 minutes, wow, I'm almost done. So I'm just gonna do a tap dance or something. So getting people to have an opportunity to see that it's possible, really. I mean, some of this is, you see someone do the 4-minute mile and you go, didn't know that was possible. I guess I can do it too. So both empowering some of these young, innovative, progressive entrepreneurs, thought-provoking, paradigm-shifting people that have these ideas. Sometimes the limiting factor is capital, and I can't do it. I have a family, I have a full-time business. I don't have the time to go out and plant the easement. But someone does, and it's a work I'd love to do, but I don't have the time. So can I support it by talking to a city planner that I know, or talking to the mayor, or providing the capital? So I don't know what all of your roles are here and what levers you can pull, and whether you are the person out at the front of the ship or you're someone that could be in the engine room going, oh, I can pull that lever and make this project a hell of a lot easier. That's what we've done. And we've created a venue where people feel okay to have these conversations. And by providing event space, I mean, our event venue rents for $150 an hour. I'm certainly not charging the nonprofits for that. So we're letting them come into a really cool environment, host events like this. We a couple months ago hosted the Florida Local Food Summit. So place where this stuff can happen. So anyway, that's a lot of what we do. I'd rather leave the rest of my 2 minutes for Q&A and let some other talented people get up and chat. But that's what we do, local food hub, and I've seen a lot of cool things in sustainability launched from that. So thank you.
Well done, John. If you're dressed like a yuppie, I'm not sure where I'm falling. We're going to do a tag team here. For those of you that don't know me, and I'm also recovering from a bit of a cold over the Thanksgiving holiday, my name is John Thaxton. I'm the Senior Vice President for the Gulf Coast Community Foundation. And I'm going to kick this off, and then I'm going to ask my good friend and partner in crime for this initiative to come up and tell you about the end results of a Gulf Coast grant. I think I've spoke at all of the sustainability initiatives in one way or the other. And I was reminded by my good friend Mike Evans when I first walked into the room today. He says, "So John, are you going to depress everyone again this year?" And I said, "Well, Mike, I didn't know I depressed them last year." He says, no, it was good because people need to hear that kind of thing. So no, I'm not going to depress you this time around. Maybe we'll hold depression for next year if I'm invited back. But rather, I want to talk to you about an innovative grant that was made by the Gulf Coast Community Foundation. Our mission is, and we don't have a slide deck, so whatever you see behind me has no relationship or bearing on what I'm saying. So our mission statement is, together with our donors, we transform our region through bold and proactive philanthropy. Gulf Coast Foundation is 21 years old this year and has a corpus of about $250 million, of which we grant out a portion of that every year into the community. We do a lot of work outside of just the conventional granting, which are things called initiatives, which are items that our board of directors sees in our community that need to really have some proactive and bold philanthropy to support them, to kind of kickstart them. We've done a lot of work in hunger with All Faiths Food Bank, and our board wanted to venture into the realm of entrepreneurial support and building businesses and employment in Sarasota. And so they chose 4 pillars, one kind of based around the Ringling School of Art and College and Design, digital arts, another one based on the sports activity that was really happening and hot in the area. Another one on medical, because of the strong medical community we have. And then the 4th one was kind of founded on the premise that Mote Marine Laboratory is a very distinctive amenity to our community. And there were a lot of assets within Mote that probably were not being best utilized. And one of those assets was venturing with for-profit corporations. Now, this idea of not-for-profits linking up with for-profits is something unusual. They don't tend to always play well together. They have separate, different motives. But we wanted to attempt to bridge that gap. And so we came up with something called the Blue Economy. And in order to kickstart this blue economy, it recognized the need that within our bays and within the Gulf of Mexico, we had these stranded assets. This community, it's right in the middle. We have the Tampa Bay National Estuary Program to the north, we have Sarasota Bay National NEP here, and we have Charlotte Harbor NEP to the south, two of the three which are represented here today. So we have this unique experience in the country to have this most remarkably restored asset as an economic engine, to actually use it in a way that we can harvest jobs, product, but we can do it in a sustainable way so that the environment is not only not damaged, but in fact, it is improved. So we offered the grant to the community. It's $500,000. So we thought that would probably get some attention, and it did. We had about 40 applications to the grant. We winnowed that down to 36 that actually filled out full applications. And from those 36 applicants, we chose 5 finalists, of which we gave $25,000 apiece to so that they could prototype their idea and their concept. The applicants that we had in the group of 36 were all over the board. We had one guy that had a waterless urinal, all the way down to people that were devising desalination opportunities for the Gulf of Mexico seawater. So the 5 prototyped their ideas and then came back to a panel that was selected because of their expertise in the areas. And one winner was chosen and given the remainder of the $500,000 grant. And that partnership was it was originally four-pronged, but it really ultimately worked out to three. One was Ed Childs and Ed Childs' restaurant group, which was great because now we actually have the end user of much of our seafood products that are delivering it to customers. We had Mote Marine Laboratory, which was the science base behind it, and the not-for-profit. We had to have a not-for-profit to actually act as a fiscal agent. And then the other was National Seafood Company. Am I saying that right, Ed? Yeah. Yeah, I got it. National Seafood Company, Jeff Sadaka, which surprisingly is the largest distributor of shrimp of any company in the United States, and they're based right here in Sarasota. So I'm going to pass it off to Ed, and Ed is going to tell you the work that he has done through Healthy Earth. But before I do that, I just want to leave with one kind of thought. Because the product that we're working with are the gray striped mullet, which is something very near and dear to me. I grew up fishing in these areas. Contrary to what the mayor said, I'm not over 100 years old. My family's been here since 1886, but you know, he was a little bit misleading there, so I want to set that record straight. But not that the mayor and the minister would be misleading. I probably should have rethought that one through before I said it. But the mullet was always very, very special to me, but when we started seeing all of these commercial fishermen coming in from literally all over the globe to catch these female mullet during their roe season, which is right now, and taking these beautiful fish, eviscerating them to get this two little tubes of yellow roe, and then throwing the rest of the fish away, killing all of the males, not to mention the non-mullet bycatch. For me, it was disheartening. It was sickening. The mullet were washing up on the beach in numbers that were similar to red tide. I would actually get phone calls as a county commissioner, you know, the red tide is back. I said, no, ma'am, it's not the red tide. These are actually fishermen that are coming in here and slaughtering one of the most, you know, incredible fish in our fisheries. And she said there should be a law. And well, maybe there should be, but we don't control that law. So rather going the regulatory route, the Gulf Coast Community Foundation chose Healthy Earth as our Gulf Coast Challenge winners. And so I'm going to invite Ed Childs up to speak to you about the product line that they're developing. Ed?
Thank you, John. It's a privilege to be back again today and to be here as one of the components of the partnership that was awarded the Gulf Coast Blue Economy Challenge. The Community Foundation, Gulf Coast Community Foundation, did a tremendous service to what we were trying to do by putting us together with some of the key people in Sarasota. I met Jeff Sadaka through a preliminary meetings that I didn't know were headed toward the Gulf Coast Community Challenge at the time, but that morphed into that. And John Reif said it earlier. John, it was really a privilege to hear your speech and your talk, and I look forward to talking to you after because I could learn some stuff from you. I'm trying to learn about farming too, and actually have two of them that I'm trying to figure out how to get the lines to get a little closer to meeting. So, but John talked about what is it that you have? You know, what is it that your community have? What is it that about our community that differentiates us from other people? What's our heritage? Well, as far as I can tell, the history and the heritage of this area since the beginning of man and woman walking around on two legs is about heritage seafood, and it's about small A agriculture. That is who we are, and that seafood component from the Indians to the Cubans to the people that came down from Cataract County in the 1880s that settled Cortez, and those families are still there today, many of those families. It was about seafood, but it was primarily about mullet, first and foremost. That's always been the biggest cash crop. And if you look today at what's going on in Cortez and what's going on the west coast of Florida, the biggest crop by far is mullet. 1 million pounds of roe goes out a year. So that's the cash crop. How does that happen? Well, it goes out as a commodity. It comes out in a very short season of 6 weeks. As John said, we're in it right now. They go out and they catch 50% of the fish that they catch are female, the other 50% are male. The females get $1.35 a pound, the males get 17 cents. That's where the problem comes in when the fish houses get overwhelmed, because we have a very inefficient business model. We don't have enough production in that very short period of time. And so what happens is they get a lot of fish in certain years, and the market price drops, and without any warning, the 2 or 3 people that are buying all of that fish say, okay, we're not buying males any longer. Well, you don't know if it's a male or a female unless you're sexing them right out of the net. And the way this thing happens, where out of that 6 weeks, there's 5 or 6 really big days. That's a $10,000 day for 3 people in a 25-foot Carolina skiff. And when they're in them heavy. So there is no sorting out of the fish. So all of a sudden then there is nothing to do with the males because they aren't buying the males. And that's the time that you see the fish washing up all the beaches, and it makes you want to pull your hair out from every standpoint of waste, of pollution, of the smell, of what it does with people, like John said, thinking that red tide is here. So that's not the right way to do it. We've got 92% of the seafood that we're eating in the United States of America is imported, and 50% is aquaculture. Wild, sustainable seafood is the coin of the realm. People don't appreciate mullet. We're trying to educate people. Mullet is a great fish. How many people eat mullet here? Wonderful. And you know that mullet's fat, right? Mullet, the time of the year to eat mullet is before it goes to roe, from about the 3rd week in July until right about now. Now all of that fat has gone into the roe. And mullet is a superior table fish. You find Europeans love it. They understand that. Locals, people like John and I that grew up with it, many of you appreciate it. But we've got a real opportunity here to educate people, because our mullet stocks, this is the ultimate sustainable seafood. As John said, we're the only place in the country that's got 3 national estuaries on our shoulder. We're ground zero for mullet because everybody wants our mullet. Why do they buy 1 million pounds of roe? It takes 10 million pounds of mullet to get to 1 million pounds of roe. You get a 17% yield generally on a female, and you're catching half of the males. So there's the math on that. They want West Florida roe because it's beautiful. It's white, sandy bottom roe. It's not on river. It's not on bay. It doesn't have a muddy taste. You are what you eat. It's very clean. But what we're doing is, and what we've been doing is, selling our treasure for pennies on the dollar. 40,000-pound containers, 1 million pounds a year, going out at $10 a pound, primarily to Sardinia and to Taiwan. Karasumi in Asia, Botarga in Europe, biblical food, been around since the Phoenicians. And they cure that roe. It loses about 15% of its weight, and it goes from $10 to up to $200 a pound. Basically, the wholesale price of it is about $90 a pound coming out of Europe. So the problem with that is they're taking our resource, our treasure, we're giving it to them and letting them add all the value. So we started the Anna Maria Fish Company to say there was a better way. Because we know the chain of custody, and we know who has the good fish, and you know where the fish are on ice. And oh, by the way, we didn't put it in a 40,000-pound container and send it all the way across the world to be cured somewhere else. So that's about better utilizing our resources, taking the value-added components here, and that was the first step. That's what got us recognized. That's how we got to be in the room that day. And the next step is that we use all of that mullet, that we don't allow that waste to happen anymore, that we find ways to pay the fishermen a better price for that fish. And so that fish doesn't get dumped. So that we work on the production end, so that we have more production facilities so we don't utilize it. And what are the hierarchy of value? Well, roe is the first one. The fillets are the second. Fish oil is another one. Fish food is another one. We can't continue to overfish the oceans by 40% a year to take 5 pounds of menhaden to grow half a pound of salmon that's been raised somewhere on a farm that would be gray if it didn't have the food, the colorings and the hormones and the antibiotics and the stuff that they put in it. This is the way to show and be a model for how we honor our heritage, how we continue to promote a working waterfront, how we take it from mullet, but not only mullet, but also amberjack, and also octopus, and also Spanish mackerel, and all of the great fish that we have here that can be artisanally produced. Okay? We can cure, pickle, dry, and we can have a name and a brand that reflects all of that and really says a lot to people about this is what our values are. This is, what we, how we look to our heritage and continue to want to promote one of the most important things in our area, and that's working waterfront. Now, this working waterfront in Cortez went through a tremendous chasm in '95 when they did the net ban. Generation after generation of family that had been down here since the late 1800s had their right to make a living taken away when they said you can't use gill nets anymore, you've got to use cast nets. That's a young man's game. You're not going to be a 40-year-old guy and being over there pulling 200 pounds of mullet over the gunnel of your boat with a cast net. And so they went through a very, very tough period. I think if you go to Cortez and you ask a lot of those people, are your best days ahead of them or behind you, they would say that their best days are behind them. And I firmly believe, and we believe, that if we can develop this industry, enhance this industry by artisanally producing, by fully utilizing our sustainable mullet and all of our other heritage seafood species in a sustainable way, that their best days can be ahead of them. The other part of this project that we're very excited about is the bivalve component. This is ground zero, and nobody knows it, for raising bivalves. Bivalves are the model for sustainable, eco-friendly aquaculture. Okay, we got to get in the aquaculture game. We have to do that in the country. We have to do it internationally, because that's how we're going to feed the burgeoning populations and the people all that want better, high-quality protein on the plate. We've got to do it through aquaculture, and we've got to find the right kind of aquaculture to do that with, and clams are a great source. We've grown middle neck clams here, hard shell clams, middle neck, little neck, top neck, quahog, all the same clam. We've done that here successfully for many years. Most people think that all of that happens up in Cedar Key. They've done it up there. They've been very, very successful at attracting the funding. We've now started the Gulf Shellfish Institute here to be an incubator to look at best practices for bivalve production. One of our partners and one of the founders of the Gulf Shellfish Institute is Kurt Himmel. Very interesting guy. I would encourage you to look up a story. Kurt Himmel, St. Pete Times, at the time Tampa Bay Times, now Clams. That's how I learned about Kurt. Kurt grows the clam seed, about 80% of the clam seed for the whole eastern seaboard, and he's right here in our area. So he's been successfully propagating the spawns on hard-shell clams, and now, as of 2 years ago, and we were the first restaurant to use his product, we have Sunray Venus clams. That's a native clam. You guys have all seen it on the beach. It's a butterfly-looking shape, more oblong than a hard shell. Has the sun's rays kind of coming through it. Delicious clam that had never been able to commercially propagate a spawn so that you could use it and have aquaculture. They've broken the code. We had them for a month last year. We've had them for about 8 or 9 months. We can't get them right now because there's red tide counts. It doesn't kill the clam. They just have to be in the water long enough after those counts go down. That has the ability, the potential to be an industry that is as big as the tomato industry in the state of Florida. Now, that's a very bold claim, but that's what we can do. And with the help that we've had from the Gulf Coast Community Foundation in the resources that they provide us, and as importantly, the way they've elevated our profile in this, now we're getting calls from all over the place about it. We're very optimistic about being able to be a model for how we use our resources in a sustainable way and promote economic development in our area.
Good afternoon. My name is Ryan Beeman, and I am the Director of Food Resource Management at All Faiths Food Bank. Before I start, John Livingston, who is our COO, Chief Operations Officer, he wanted to be here today. He planned on being here today, and up until 48 hours ago, he was coming, but something came up that he was unable to make it. So I'm here on his behalf. Told him I would do the best job I could. So, you know, I try not to use my notes, but I want to make sure I don't miss anything. So please forgive me for the notes. I joined All Faiths Food Bank back in January of 2014. And I was hired to come on to develop and launch a fruit and vegetable mobile program. For years, All Faiths Food Bank had desired and dreamed of expanding their fruit and vegetable program beyond just what they were adding to some of their pantries and handing out at some of the school pantries. And for years and years of just roundtable discussions, a few leaders and donors in the community finally stood up and said, let's actually get it done. They partnered with the Gulf Coast Community Foundation, the Venice Yacht Club, and some very generous, wonderful donors in the area, and they acquired a 33-foot refrigerated truck, and that's how the Sprout program was born. So that's how the Sprout program was born. Originally, they hoped to, their original projections for the truck was they wanted to distribute at least 64,000 pounds of produce the first year, kind of what I was charged with. And I wanted to put that up there just for you guys to keep that in the back of your mind because it'll come to light here in just a minute. When we first launched the Sprout truck, the whole idea behind it was so that our clients would have a shopping experience. So they wanted clients to be able to come up into the truck. We had shelves on both sides, let them choose 2 or 3 items that they wanted from the truck, and then they would exit down the back. It was a nice idea in theory, but after the first day, I realized that this was not going to work out. You know, it's nice to have the shopping experience, but for safety of many of the clients that we served, either younger, middle-aged, or even a lot of the elderly that were disabled, for speed and for safety, it just was not feasible. So that's when I came up with the menu idea, where everything that was on our truck, I put it on a menu board, and then I created tickets that had everything that was on the menu. And we have volunteers, and all the clients line up, and they say, you know, pick 3, 4 items off the menu, and they choose items off the menu, and they put the ticket in the window. Then we started the idea of having recyclable bags. Instead of using plastic or paper, we use the recyclable bags that you buy at the store. I guarantee you have 4 in your trunk right now. And they're rather expensive, but, you know, resourcing through the community and talking with some donors, we were able to purchase quite a few of them that had the Sprout logo on there with the address and phone number for the food bank and the website, all that information. And clients were actually bringing it back. So every time they would come back to the Sprout truck, they would bring their bag with them, and we would just fill it up again. So the menu tickets worked out very, very well, probably within about a month of starting into the program. The numbers at each Sprout stop really started to almost double. So let's see. The Sprout truck, it's designed for just fruits and vegetables, but we do not only put produce. Sorry, that's not our only way of getting rid of or getting produce through our food bank. We use the Sprout truck, but we also send it to mobile pantries. We send produce to school pantries. We have over 100 partner agencies throughout Sarasota and DeSoto County that either come by and pick up produce from our warehouse, or we send it to their location. Let's see, sorry. When I was interviewed to do this job, the COO told me that if you want to earn a fat paycheck, this was not the place for you to come. But if you come into food banking, you will get more in return by the look on people's faces, and your heart will grow much more than your account ever would. So, you know, it was a decision to come on board, even though I took a pay cut. He was absolutely right. It has been I've been rewarded tenfold by the thank yous, the God bless yous. When are you coming in? You know, do you have a schedule? Can I get stuff from my loved ones, for my neighbor? The program really has dug in deep for the last 2.5 years and has grown. We've doubled the locations that we go to, and we now have 2 Sprout trucks. But the stories that I have, and I could share, you know, with cancer patients, that they can't afford the food. They can't afford the vegetables that the doctor prescribed them because fruit and vegetables are so expensive. Yeah, the electric bill, there's families that have shared with us that, you know, because of the fruits and vegetables that they've received from us, they can now use the money that they were going to use to purchase produce towards their electric bill or their power bill or medical bills, or, you know, anything that they need to take care of for their family. I told you about the 64,000 pounds of produce that I was supposed to distribute through the Sprout program the first year. For 2014, we distributed over 245,000 pounds of produce to over 23,000 clients. In 2015, we distributed over 425,000 pounds of produce through 30,000 clients. In 2016, we had just 1 Sprout truck up until July, and July is when we launched the 2nd Sprout truck. So January through October, we've distributed over 514,000 pounds of produce, and that's to 25,500 clients. So we'll definitely exceed that once we get through, or to the end of the year. As a food bank in all, I told you we don't distribute produce just through the Sprout program. With all of our agencies, the pickups, the school pantries throughout Sarasota and DeSoto County, and the Sprout program, for 2014, we distributed 1.7 million pounds of produce. In 2015, we distributed 2.26 million pounds of produce, and we are projected to clear 2.5 million pounds for this year. No, thank you. I'd expecting that. I have to admit the job was not easy. It was, as John saw many times, it's back-breaking work. But I saw something on the horizon. I knew that we could not keep this amount of produce coming through the food bank without someone going out there to try to find more. Especially with a 2nd truck, and we want to get a 3rd truck and a 4th truck. If we want to hit all the areas that we need to hit, we need more trucks. And the only way we can do that is that we have the produce to fill those trucks. So in January, they created the position for the Director of Food Resource Management, which is what I'm doing now. I applied for it and received the position, but it wasn't until July that I could start doing the job because we couldn't find anybody to do my job. But now that we've got all that ironed out, that's what I've started to do. The biggest thing that I started off from the get-go was our retail store donation program. We have over 50 retail stores in the area that in the past, the drivers are the faces and the name of the food bank. So as long as the food bank's been there, we've never had anybody that's been around to develop that relationship. There was no, if they had a problem with the driver, or if they had a problem with an extra load they needed picked up, or they knew of another company that they vendor with that needed to pick up, they wouldn't know who to call or just wait until their truck shows up the next time. That's what I'm doing now, trying to bridge that gap. Just to educate the managers and the assistant managers, the deli and bakery, all the department heads of the things that we can use. You know, don't use, in the past they would use the stuff going to the food bank almost as a garbage can. Like, we can't use this, it would go, the stuff we're getting now is high quality stuff. It's like an ugly tomato. I mean, it's if I wouldn't serve it to my child, it would not be on the Sprout truck. But we know we appreciate pallets of flowers. But flowers don't help us tackle hunger. So that's what I'm trying to educate the managers at the stores with. And then the other big initiative I have is trying to develop a relationship with the local farming community. You know, where this is brand new, there's not, you know, there's a lot of examples throughout the country of food banks working with farmers, but we're just now starting to get our feet wet. Got connections at the Extension's office, and I've been in touch with the USDA, and they're helping us get our feet wet in the farming community. We don't want to go door to door with our hands out. We want to build a partnership that benefits the farmers and as well as the clients that we serve. You know, every Thanksgiving, my son would always ask me for his class, you know, what are you thankful for? And I did, so every year I would write down, what are you thankful for, before we'd have our Thanksgiving meal at home. And he didn't ask me this year, and I actually typed it out. But I thought it was very hand in hand with what the whole Sprout program is about, what All Faith Food Bank is about, and I just wanted to read it to you. Let's see, before I finish, let me tell you a little bit about myself and my newfound food banking point of view. I grew up just down the road in Bradenton, and I've spent almost my entire life here from about the ages of 5 or 6. I went to elementary, middle school, and high school here, and I started working in the restaurant business the day after graduation. And I went to the local community college, and I found my wife here. I got married here, and I'm raising my 2 wonderful sons here. Growing up until the time I got married, I spent half of my life on the beaches of Anna Maria, fishing these local shores, and racing sailboats up and down the Manatee River and the Tampa Bay. But I spent my entire career working in this area. But it wasn't until I started working at All Faith Food Bank that I realized just how lucky and privileged we are, and how lucky and privileged my life was. Money was very tight in my house growing up. I usually got stuck with hand-me-downs from my older brother. I only got 1 new pair of shoes every year, and that's when school started, and Christmas and birthdays were never really big events. But I never had to worry about my next meal, and I never had to worry on whether there was food on the table at night. You know, that was never a concern of mine, and that's what I see every day. These, you know, there's people all around us that they don't know where their next meal is going to come from, and that's why we are here. Over the past 3 years, I've had the opportunity to see what hunger is in our community and what it really means. We get so used to our daily routines that we don't realize that hunger is all around us. Being out there on the front lines over these past 3 years has really opened my eyes to the impact of hunger and how it's impacting our community. Hunger does not have weekends, it doesn't have seasons, and it doesn't have holidays. Hunger is year-round, and I feel fortunate that I am able to fight it every day. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Can you hold up your cards? I see several on the table, and our volunteers will come around, and we'll be happy to start the Q&A portion of the afternoon. This first question is for Ed and John. Can you guys see okay? What is the timeline for implementation of the Sustainable Seafood Project? What are the expected outcomes of this project in terms of pounds of fish harvested, jobs created, and et cetera?
The timeline is not, is this one? No.
I think it's on the side.
Oh, yeah, we are. Ah, yeah.
Yup, he got it.
And normally I wouldn't need it, but with my voice a little weak. This was a very first time around for us, and so unlike a lot of the work that we do at the foundation, where we have specific year-end and deliverables, we did not have all those instituted into this grant process. So rather what we do is we have quarterly updates from the Healthy Earth team so that we can kind of monitor the progress. One of the challenges that we saw in going into this space versus the conventional grant making was These are not 12-year products. We are developing international markets, and we are changing an age-old fishery to fish in a different way. We are seeking a National Marine Council's certification for sustainable seafood harvesting methodologies and products in our area, and that's just the beginning. And so all three of those things that I just described are multi-year. They necessitate a multi-year effort, and so that's the best answer that I can give you. We monitor it. We monitor it very closely. Ed and I knew each other before we began this grant. I obviously knew Ed through his father, who my wife and I were huge fans of, and we knew him through his restaurants. But now we're a heck of a lot closer tied than we ever had been because of the communications and things that are necessary to make sure that we move the needle forward.
Yeah, it does not happen fast. But we are seeing a lot more of attention. We continue to grow the Batarga business, and we are now working on developing new products. One of those is a mullet burger. And we've done some really exciting work on that and we did that with Sean Barrett, who runs Dock to Dish. You may have heard about that. They're one of basically a CSA for fish nationwide. And they were working with Eric Repair and Dan Barber, who are kind of two of the guys that I really look up to in the seafood business. And they worked on what they called a Montauk burger. It's wild, sustainable seafood. So it could be dogfish, it could be sea bass, but they worked a recipe up and they sent it down to us, and we tried it. We thought it was pretty good, and then we worked ours up for a mullet burger, which we think is every bit as good. And those are the kind of ways we think we can get to full utilization. It takes patience and it takes resources. There's no question about it. The clam business, there are some impediments to the clam business. What I didn't say is we're ground zero because of water quality, nutrient levels, and water temperature. This is the best place in the country to raise clams. Warmer water, faster growth. We can grow them about half the time that cold water environs can. So moving that ahead, the sun rays, the potential there is so exciting, but we've got a problem that we've got to fix first. In the nursery, they don't know if it's viral or bacterial or what it is, but something can cause large kill-offs of the larvae. And so when that's happening and you're trying to get farmers to invest and to put their time and effort and all of that in, you can't have that looming out there. We're trying to find a PhD. It's interesting to me that there's not one PhD in the country studying this. It's certainly somebody should be. Now you're seeing the government take a higher, give aquaculture a higher profile. We're seeing more resources come into it. I hope that doesn't change now with the new administration. But they realize the importance of it, and I think through that, hopefully, we can get some things that will advance the issue that we're having with the sun rays.
Just to stay on topic with the clams you're raising, how many toxins are found in the clam population?
Oh, I have no idea. I'd have to get my scientist to ask that.
We need that PhD, don't we? We need the PhD.
Yes, we need the PhD. Well, what we have is in Florida, we have a tremendous seafood regulations or safety system. So if you're eating seafood in the state of Florida, you can feel real good that it's good quality product.
There's several questions about where can I buy mullet and can you actually eat Batarga, which is delicious, and yes.
You bet you can eat Batarga.
If you can afford it.
Yeah, well, it's a very high-end product, but a little of it goes a long way, and you can come up to one of the restaurants and have it in a dish. And you can buy mullet at Walt's. Mm-hmm. But let me tell you, and those probably a lot of the people, I was really impressed with the amount of people in here that are eating mullet. That's really encouraging. But you need to be eaten at the right time of the year, and just like everything else, it's all about how you treat it. So you've got to take that mullet out of the net, and while it's full of vim and vigor, break the neck, and put it into a nice brine. And when you do that, it makes a tremendous difference in the quality of the fish. There's a number of restaurants that are selling it in Cortez, and Steve Phelps, who's another one of my heroes, indigenous, probably the best hands on the west coast of Florida for sustainable and really progressive seafood. And he did a mullet dish last week. He served 22 orders on Thursday. When I heard about it, I was down there Friday night and had it, and I think he sold out of it by Sunday of some mullet that we got him. So you're going to see more and more people, and you should be asking your restaurants tours, okay, because Branzino sucks. Eat mullet.
I think that's a good point. I think it's a good point. Your server should be able to tell you where your food is coming from. You know, we always ask, where is this burger from? Where is this fish from? Where do you source your proteins? And if your servers look at you like you're crazy, that's probably signal number one that they're probably not truly invested in where they're sourcing their products from. But yes, to speak to Steve Phelps and so many other members of our local culinary community, especially all of those involved in Chef Collaborative. Have you guys heard of the trash fish dinners that we've done here the last 4 or 5 years? I think we're on number 4. That's a big deal. And a lot of us aren't a fan of that word, trash fish. My husband Dave and I, we eat pretty much everything that's legal.
I was going to name our talk from trash to treasure,
Ooh.
but they talked me out of it. They didn't.
I like it. I'm on board. So we have a couple food bank questions. Are you sourcing some of these projects from gleaning projects, and how are those? I can't see you. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
How are those going?
Yes, we partner with Janie's Garden and Transition Sarasota. Don Hall helped get that up and running. Every Monday, a team of volunteers meets at Jessica's farm, and they pick produce for us, usually the leafy greens, some kale. Every so often we'll get some cucumbers or zucchini in there. And it's anywhere between a pallet to a full pallet, or sorry, a full pallet to 2 pallets every Monday around 11 o'clock is when we pick it up. And that goes through the entire harvest season. And then there is a large blueberry farm out in Arcadia that allowed us to glean for them last year. We're going to set up differently this next year because this past year was a trial run, and we had about 20 people out there that got a couple of boxes worth. So the way we had it set up was wrong, but we live and learn. So we're hoping the gleaning project is going to grow much more this next year with the more farms that we can build relationships with.
And then we have one last question, actually, for Rindy, if you don't mind, if we can join us up here, if we can pass you a mic. David, will you pass her the mic right there? What forum methods did you find worked best to accept new ideas and feedback from the community for your project?
Could you say that one more time?
Yes. What ideas do you think worked best for people presenting new ideas to you and getting them involved in the community for your various projects?
Oh, well, we don't turn anyone away. And I would say, generally speaking, the projects kind of self-select. So sometimes it's not the time for that project to have wings and fly. Usually single moms, or just too much happening at the same time. And we always say, we don't want you to burn out, and come back next year, and it may be the time then. So I hope, did I answer the question?
Yes, wait for your wings, then you'll fly. Thank you to all of our panelists. We appreciate your commitment to our community.